And it looks as if Donald Trump is about to appear at the White House. He'll be coming through those doors in just a few moments and coming to the podium for this very important primetime address on the state of the conflict in the Middle East. Let's listen.
The team at NASA and our brave astronauts on the successful launch of Artemis 2. It was quite something. It will be traveling further than any manned rocket has ever flown and will very substantially pass the moon, go around it, and come back home from a distance that has never been done before. It's amazing. They are on the way, and God bless them. These are brave people. We want to God bless those 4 unbelievable astronauts. As we speak this evening, it's been just 1 month since the United States military began Operation Epic Fury, targeting the world's #1 state sponsor of terror, Iran. In these past 4 weeks, our armed forces have delivered swift, decisive, overwhelming victories on the battlefield. Victories like few people have ever seen before. Tonight, Iran's Navy is gone. Their Air Force is in ruins. Their leaders, most of them terrorist regime they led, are now dead. Their command and control of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is being decimated as we speak. Their ability to launch missiles and drones is dramatically curtailed, and their weapons, factories, and rocket launchers are being blown to pieces. Very few of them left. Never in the history of warfare has an enemy suffered such clear and devastating large-scale losses in a matter of weeks. Our enemies are losing, in America, as it has been for 5 years under my presidency, is winning, and now winning bigger than ever before. Before discussing this current situation, I also want to thank our troops for the masterful job they did in taking the country of Venezuela in a matter of minutes. That hit was quick, lethal, violent, and respected by everyone all over the world. After rebuilding our military during my first term, we have by far the strongest military anywhere in the world. And now we're working along with Venezuela and are, in a true sense, joint venture partners. We're getting along incredibly well in the production and sale of massive amounts of oil and gas, the second largest reserves on Earth after the United States of America. We're now totally independent of the Middle East, and yet we are there to help. We don't have to be there. We don't need their oil. We don't need anything they have, but we're there to help our allies. Tonight, I want to provide an update on the tremendous progress our warriors have made in Iran and discuss why Operation Epic Fury is necessary for the safety of America and the security of the free world. From the very first day I announced my campaign for president in 2015, I have vowed that I would never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. This fanatical regime has been chanting death to America, death to Israel for 47 years. Their proxies were behind the murder of 241 Americans in the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, the slaughter of hundreds of our service members with roadside bombs. They were involved in the attack on the USS Cole, and they carried out the countless other heinous acts, including the just horrible, bloody atrocities of October 7th in Israel, something that most people have never seen anything like it. This murderous regime also recently killed 45,000 of their own people who were protesting in Iran. 45,000 dead. For these terrorists to have nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat. The most violent and thuggish regime on earth would be free to carry out their campaigns of terror, coercion, conquest, and mass murder from behind a nuclear shield. I will never let that happen, and neither should any of our past presidents. This situation has been going on for 47 years and should have been handled long before I arrived in office. I did many things during my 2 terms in office to stop the quest for nuclear weapons by Iran first, and perhaps most importantly, I killed General Qasem Soleimani in my first term. He was an evil genius, a brilliant person, a horrible human being, however, the father of the roadside bomb, and he lived just horrible what he did. Iran would have been perhaps in far better, stronger position. He lived, we would have had probably a different conversation tonight. But you know what? We'd still be winning and winning big. And then, very importantly, I terminated Barack Hussein Obama's Iran nuclear deal, a disaster. Obama gave them $1.7 billion in cash, green cash. Took it out of banks from Virginia, D.C., and Maryland, all the cash they had. He flew it by airplanes in an attempt to buy their respect and loyalty, but it didn't work. They laughed at our president and went on with their mission to have a nuclear bomb. His Iran deal would have led to a colossal arsenal of massive nuclear weapons for Iran, and they would have had them years ago, and they would have used them. It would have been a different world. There would have been no Middle East and no Israel right now, in my opinion, the opinion of a lot of great experts, had I not terminated that terrible deal. And I was so honored to do it. I was so proud to do it. It was so bad right from the beginning. Essentially, I did what no other president was willing to do. They made mistakes, and I am correcting them. My first preference was always the path of diplomacy, yet the regime continued their relentless quest for nuclear weapons and rejected every attempt at an agreement. For this reason, in June, I ordered a strike on Iran's key nuclear facilities, an Operation Midnight Hammer. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Those beautiful B-2 bombers performed magnificently. We totally obliterated those nuclear sites. The regime then sought to rebuild their nuclear program at a totally different location, making clear they had no intention of abandoning their pursuit of nuclear weapons. They were also rapidly building a vast stockpile of conventional ballistic missiles and would soon have had missiles that could reach the American homeland, Europe, and virtually any other place on Earth. Iran's strategy was so obvious. They wanted to produce as many missiles as possible, and they did, with the longest range possible, and they had some weapons that nobody believed they had. We just learned that out. We took them out. We took them all out so that no one would really dare stop them. And their race for a nuclear bomb, a nuclear weapon like nobody's ever seen before. They were right at the doorstep. For years, everyone has said that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, but in the end, those are just words if you're not willing to take action when the time comes. As I stated in my announcement of Operation Epic Fury, our objectives are very simple and clear. We are systematically dismantling the regime's ability to threaten America or project power outside of their borders. That means eliminating Iran's Navy, which is now absolutely destroyed, hurting their Air Force and their missile program at levels never seen before, and annihilating their defense industrial base. We've done all of it. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their missiles are just about used up or beaten. Taken together, these actions will cripple Iran military, crush their ability to support terrorist proxies, and deny them the ability to build a nuclear bomb. Our armed forces have been extraordinary. There's never been anything like it militarily. Everyone is talking about it, and tonight I'm pleased to say that these core strategic objectives are nearing completion. As we celebrate this progress, we think especially of the 13 American warriors who have laid down their lives in this fight to prevent our children from ever having to face a nuclear Iran. Twice this past month, I have traveled to Dover Air Force Base, and it's been something. I wanted to be with those heroes as they return to American soil, and I was with them and their families, their parents, their wives, the husbands. We salute them, and now we must honor them by completing the mission for which they gave their lives. And every single one of the people, their loved ones said, please, sir, please finish the job, every one of them. And we are going to finish the job, and we're going to finish it very fast. We're getting very close. I want to thank our allies in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. They've been great, and we will not let them get hurt or fail in any way, shape, or form. Many Americans have been concerned to see the recent rise in gasoline prices here at home. This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. This is yet more proof that Iran can never be trusted with nuclear weapons. They will use them, and they will use them quickly. It would lead to decades of extortion, economic pain, and instability worse than we can ever imagine. The United States has never been better prepared economically to confront this threat. You all know that. We built the strongest economy in history. We're going through it right now, the strongest in history. In 1 year, we've taken a dead and crippled country. I hate to say that, but we were a dead and crippled country after the last administration and made it the hottest country anywhere in the world by far, with no inflation, record-setting investments coming into the United States, over $18 trillion, and the highest stock market ever, with 53 all-time record highs in just 1 year. It all positioned us to get rid of a cancer that has long simmered. It's known as the nuclear Iran, and they didn't know what was coming. They've never imagined it. Remember, because of our Drill Baby Drill program, America has plenty of gas. We have so much gas. Under my leadership, we are #1 producer of oil and gas on the planet, without even discussing the millions of barrels that we're getting from Venezuela. Because of the Trump administration's policies, we produce more oil and gas than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. Think of that, Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. And that number will soon be substantially higher than that. There's no country like us anywhere in the world, and we're in great shape for the future. The United States imports almost no oil through the Hormuz Strait and won't be taking any in the future. We don't need it. We haven't needed it, and we don't need it. We've beaten and completely decimated Iran. They are decimated, both militarily and economically and in every other way. And the countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. They must grab it and cherish it. They can do it easily. We will be helpful, but they should take the lead in protecting the oil that they so desperately depend on. So to those countries that can't get fuel, many of which refuse to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, we had to do it ourselves. I have a suggestion. #1, buy oil from the United States of America. We have plenty. We have so much. And #2, build up some delayed courage. Should have done it before. Should have done it with us, as we asked. Go to the Strait and just take it, protect it, use it for yourselves. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done, so it should be easy. And in any event, when this conflict is over, the Strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally. They're going to want to be able to sell oil because that's all they have to try and rebuild. It will resume the flowing, and the gas prices will rapidly come back down. Stock prices will rapidly go back up. They haven't come down very much, frankly. They came down a little bit, but they've had some very good days over the last couple of days. We've done actually much better than I thought, but we had to take that little journey to Iran to get rid of this horrible threat. With our historic tax cuts, where people are just now talking about receiving larger refunds than they ever thought possible, they are getting so much more money than they thought. That's from the great, big, beautiful bill. Our economy is strong and improving by the day, and it will soon be roaring back like never before. It will top the levels that it was a month ago. I've made clear from the beginning of Operation Epic Fury that we will continue until our objectives are fully achieved. Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing. Regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but regime change has occurred because of all of their original leaders' death. They're all dead. The new group is less radical and much more reasonable. Yet if during this period of time no deal is made, we have our eyes on key targets. If there is no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We have not hit their oil, even though that's the easiest target of all, because it would not give them even a small chance of survival or rebuilding. But we could hit it, and it would be gone, and there's not a thing they could do about it. They have no anti-aircraft equipment. Their radar is 100% annihilated. We are unstoppable as a military force. The nuclear sites that we obliterated with the B-2 bombers have been hit so hard that it would take months to get near the nuclear dust, and we have it under intense satellite surveillance and control. If we see them make a move, even a move for it, we'll hit them with missiles very hard again. We have all the cards, they have none. It's very important that we keep this conflict in perspective. American involvement in World War I lasted 1 year, 7 months, and 5 days. World War II lasted for 3 years, 8 months, and 25 days. The Korean War lasted for 3 years, 1 month, and 2 days. The Vietnam War lasted for 19 years, 5 months, and 29 days. Iraq went on for 8 years, 8 months, and 28 days. We are in this military operation, so powerful, so brilliant, against one of the most powerful countries for 32 days. And the country has been eviscerated and essentially is really no longer a threat. They were the bully of the Middle East, but they're the bully no longer. This is a true investment in your children and your grandchildren's future. The whole world is watching, and they can't leave the power, strength, and brilliance. They just can't believe what they're seeing. They leave it to your imagination, but they can't believe what they're seeing, the brilliance of the United States military. Tonight, every American can look forward to a day when we are finally free from the wickedness of Iranian aggression and the specter of nuclear blackmail. Because of the actions we have taken, we are on the cusp of ending Iran's sinister threat to America and the world. And I'll tell you, the world is watching. And when we do, when it's all over, the United States will be safer, stronger, more prosperous, and greater than it has ever been before. May God bless the men and women of the United States Armed Forces, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much, and good night.
And you were listening to President Trump there, giving his first direct speech on why the U.S. attacked Iran in the first place over a month ago. An 18-minute speech where he basically, first of all, declared victory, saying that epic fury has, resulted in swift, decisive, and overwhelming victories with Iran's Navy, Air Force leaders, all destroyed and killed. And then he outlined the case to Americans on why the operation was necessary, going back primarily to his campaign pledge that there will not be a nuclear-armed Iran, criticizing the deal that Barack Obama made as well, called the JCPOA, which he said would have led to Iran producing a nuclear weapon and threatening the United States. He went on to say that the core strategic goals for the U.S. are near complete as far as Iran is concerned. He also made mention of airlines, in particular with relation to the Strait of Hormuz, saying that others must now take care of it. They should take the lead. They should, meantime, buy U.S. oil and build up the courage to take it and protect it. I quote directly there. And he also did mention that negotiations are ongoing. But the end is near, basically saying also that the end of the military operation or Epic Fury is 2 to 3 weeks away. The U.S., meantime, will continue, President Trump says, to attack Iranian sites, at the same time mentioning that negotiations are ongoing with, leaders. He didn't say who they are, with new leaders in the regime. Well, Nick Harper has been watching all things very closely for us as well. He joins us live now from Washington, D.C. So tell us a bit more about what the president has said about Washington's plans for the war on Iran. Is there actual clarity now on what the aims are?
Well, not entirely, Arnold, and I have to admit that felt like a bit of a placeholder speech. There wasn't a great deal of new information. Much of what Donald Trump spoke about in those 18 minutes was really a repeat of what we've heard in recent days, parroting some of his own social media posts, returning to some of his previous gripes about past US presidents, but also outlining his perceived evils in Iran. And I think much of what was detailed there was really trying to portray this as a major win for the United States. As you mentioned, he went through those successes, listing his objectives and explaining how he believes those objectives were met, including by saying there had been swift, decisive and overwhelming victories on the battlefield, saying that the Iranian Navy was gone, that the Air Force was in ruins, that most of the leaders were now dead, and that missiles and nuclear weapons were essentially off the table, that the United States had helped to obliterate those and make sure that Iran never got a nuclear weapon. But I think there were some glaring omissions in all of that. And as well as not really detailing where things were heading with negotiations, he did not exactly explain how much longer this military campaign would last. Over the last few days, he's been a little bit more specific, talking about 2 to 3 weeks. During the course of that speech, he reiterated that 2 to 3 week timeline, but he said that in that 2 to 3 week timeline, the US would hit Iran extremely hard, and didn't quite say that at the end of that 3 weeks, that would be the end of the military campaign. He said that the United States was on track to end things shortly, very shortly, and he also said that the core strategic objectives are nearing completion, but didn't detail exactly how he would consider the objectives had been met at potentially the end of that 2 to 3 week timeline. So reassurances, definitely an opportunity to claim victory in this military campaign. But really, I think there's a great deal of clarity that was simply lacking from this speech, and clarity that many Americans who are against this conflict, and clarity that allies in the region have been looking for, perhaps something that Donald Trump could have given them, and he didn't during this speech.
All right. So Nick, as you mentioned, Mr. Trump making the case there, but he's been speaking to a country where a majority opposed this from the very beginning, with gas prices climbing. Can this speech really shift public opinion?
Probably not a great deal. I mean, he did speak for a moment, a brief moment, on the rising gas prices, the fact that gas prices have gone up about 30% for motorists in the course of this 5-week conflict. He spoke about them, saying that he knew Americans were, in his words, concerned about rising petrol prices, but he did say that these would be short-term increases, and he also said that they had increased entirely as a result of Iranian attacks against oil tankers within the region, very much laying the blame at Iran's feet and not taking the blame himself for starting this conflict with Iran. I think trying to win over public opinion will be very hard, because we've seen his popularity decrease as this conflict has gone on. About 2/3 of Americans now say they just want a swift withdrawal from this campaign. They just want it ended, even if all the objectives have not been achieved. Only about 28% 8% of Americans explicitly support this military action. And really, those numbers have been dropping the longer this has been going on. So perhaps this was a chance for the US president to explain to Americans why this action was needed. And Donald Trump certainly went through the list there. But perhaps there wasn't quite enough reassurance for those skeptical Americans who are looking at this conflict and wondering whether it was all worth it.
All right, Nick, appreciate the instant analysis. Nick Harper with the latest for CNA from Washington, D.C.
For more insight on the latest revelations by Mr. Trump, let's speak now with Klaus Laris. He's a distinguished professor of history and international affairs at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
He's also global fellow at the WABA Initiative for Strategic Competition in Washington, D.C. Professor, good to have you on the show. We've heard comments from our correspondent. I wonder if you agree as well. Did President Trump say anything new, or at least provide some clarity on what the mission is now?
Well, it was an interesting speech. It was relatively short. I'd expected a somewhat longer speech because normally Trump talks a lot longer than he did tonight. He was pretty concise, pretty much to the point, also quite unusual for Trump. And I think the main objective of this speech was to reassure the public that the rising gas prices, the falling stock market, that is just temporary, that it will be overcome very quickly. He mentioned 2 to 3 weeks again, and he tried to express confidence that the mission is almost completed and that it will soon be finished and that it will be a huge victory for the United States. It will make the United States safer and stronger and more prosperous. He didn't quite explain in what precise way, but he claimed that. And what I also noticed, and much to my surprise, I have to say, was that he was not too negative on the European NATO allies. Because before the speech and also in the last few days, Trump has said an awful lot of negative things about the Europeans, that they were not on board, that they didn't have courage to join the United States and things like that. And he made a few snide remarks about the Europeans, that they should buy oil in the United States or go to the Straits of Hormuz and open it themselves and get the oil themselves. But apart from that, he really was fairly quiet about that. And there was general fear among the NATO allies that he would actually announce a withdrawal from NATO or scaling down of American commitment to NATO. And all that hasn't happened. So I would say that most European NATO allies are quite relieved after that speech.
Understood. I wonder, though, did he make a convincing case to the Americans? I mean, talking about Iran's nuclear program and talking about how this is going to be short-term and good for the longer term for the country?
I would say if you are a Democrat and were strongly opposed to the war, he probably didn't convince anyone. His supporters will be convinced by that, and perhaps people who were quite unsure but have a tendency to side with Trump, he may have been able to reassure them that it is not longer lasting and that it was utterly necessary to do so. He played up the nuclear danger from Iran and said how, essentially he said how close Iran was to building a nuclear weapons. He brought in the ballistic missiles they were building, and he also mentioned that Iran was supporting terrorist proxy forces in the Middle East, and that his action and the brilliant action by the American military has really prevented that Iran can continue on that course, and therefore the world has been made safer and stronger, according to him. And a lot of people who are favoring his position will have been somewhat reassured by that. Yes.
Okay, Professor, one of the cases that Mr. Trump made for why the war in Iran is necessary is that Iran was right at the doorstep of gaining a nuclear weapon. But we've heard conflicting signals. At times, the administration would say that the nuclear threat is neutralized. Now it's being emphasized again. What do you make of that? What's changed? Is this intelligence or messaging?
Nothing has changed. That is just the assumption and the claims Trump and his administration has been making for many weeks now. But all the experts say that is simply not correct. And we had the 2015 agreement, the nuclear agreement signed between the United States, Iran, and a number of European countries, and also Russia and China, which actually prevented Iran from building a nuclear weapon. That agreement neglected the ballistic missiles in Iran. It also neglected the support Iran gives for people like Hezbollah and Hamas. But regarding nuclear weapons, the 2015 agreement was actually quite good and contained Iran's ambitions. And Trump didn't like that, so he withdrew from it in 2018. And ever since, he has basically been trying to go back to the nuclear achievement of the 2015 agreement. Of course, he didn't mention any of that. He actually said the 2015 agreement was a really bad agreement, and no real expert agrees with that. And all the experts also say Iran was nowhere close to building a nuclear weapon. And that would have perhaps been possible in the future, but many years down the future. So the Trump administration has clearly exaggerated the case for having to attack Iran and to bombard Iran in order to take out Iran's nuclear ability. This was not an imminent threat. And that, of course, raises the question whether it was against international law to attack a sovereign country such as Iran, because there was no imminent threat.
Interesting that you should mention that, Professor, because President Trump also talked about infrastructure in his speech. I just want to ask for that to be played back so we get an idea of what he said.
We are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We have not hit their oil, even though that's the easiest target of all, because it would not give them even a small chance of survival or rebuilding. But we could hit it, and it would be gone, and there's not a thing they could do about it.
So I'm wondering, apart from the question about whether it's a war crime, Professor, I'm wondering what would be the impact, what would be the implications of President Trump doing something like that, going after power or water supplies in Iran?
I'm not sure that he really means it. He is clearly threatening it, and he wants to come to an agreement, to an understanding with Iran. He also said in his speech that regime change was apparently never what he intended. So, of course, a few times in the past, he has said that regime change was his objective, but now he said that regime change never really was what he really wanted to go for. And he wants to have an understanding, and he has claimed for many weeks that, or for many days now, that there have been talks between the United States and Iran. The Iranians have rejected that claim, and we understand that there are only indirect talks taking place with Pakistan as a mediator. So direct talks between Iran and the United States seem not to have been taken place. But Trump would like to get there, to really have a treaty with Iran, a peace treaty with Iran. And in order to get there, to make the Iranian regime move towards that goal, he threatens all sorts of things. And in theory, he could indeed do what he just threatened, because the American military, from a military point of view, has been very successful. The Navy has been taken out. Any air defense systems have been taken out. The Iranians have. Much of the Air Force has been taken out, and radar and satellite installations. So the American Air Force could bombard watering plants and electric plants, but I wonder whether Trump really wants to do that, because that would, of course, be pretty terrible for the entire region, and there would be also an awful lot of pressure by the Gulf states on Trump not to go that far. It is really a threat in order to get the Iranian regime, or what is left of the regime, to the negotiating table to come to some sort of deal with Donald Trump. And of course, that deal has to include an opening of the Hormuz Straits. That is clear. So Trump also said that he doesn't really need oil and gas which goes through the Straits of Hormuz, but it would look bad for him if he withdraws from the war after 2 or 3 weeks, declares victory, but the Straits of Hormuz are still closed, and international shipping trade can still not function properly regarding the Straits of Hormuz. That would only be a very tarnished victory, and of course that is not in Trump's interest.
All right. Mr. Trump also claims that the U.S. doesn't import any oil from Strait of Hormuz and that the countries that do depend on it should step up and take it and buy U.S. oil instead. I think we do have a soundbite from that. Let's play it and then continue the conversation.
The countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. They must grab it and cherish it. They can do it easily. We will be helpful, but they should take the lead in protecting the oil that they so desperately depend on.
So just how realistic is it for other countries to bypass Hormuz and rely on U.S. supply instead, Professor?
Very unrealistic, I would say, because Iran doesn't need to keep bombing the Strait of Hormuz. The threat of being able to do so, even hitting one tanker out of 100, will scare all the tankers in the world, will scare all the insurance companies in the world, and of course also the states like the Gulf states, and they will then not dare to drive tankers through the Straits of Hormuz. And as long as Iran has that capability, only with a few ballistic missiles left, then the Straits of Hormuz will essentially continue to be blocked. So it is highly unrealistic that you can just drive your national navies to the Straits of Hormuz and defeat Iran, because Iran has a chokehold on the Straits of Hormuz. And of course, before the war, the American military knew that very well. They informed and advised Trump that that would be the chokehold, that would be the leverage which Iran has and will probably use. But apparently the administration did not listen properly or did not want to believe it and went ahead with the bombardment of Iran anyway. And soon afterwards, Iran, of course, effectively closed the Straits of Hormuz. Since then, we have a economic crisis, a global energy crisis, and many countries in the world, particularly countries in the global south, many developing countries such as the Philippines, Thailand, and many other countries have had severe problems obtaining gas and oil. And the more developed countries, such as the European ones, they are still able to get a lot of oil and gas, but prices have rocketed. So the entire world has been affected by the Iran war. And now Trump is really trying to push the responsibility for opening the Straits of Hormuz to other countries, particularly, as I said at the beginning of our conversation, to the European allies. And that is, of course, highly unfair. You know, Trump is really responsible for bringing about the closure of the Straits of Hormuz, and now he gives the responsibility for opening the straits to other countries. This is quite convenient and will not be very popular. That will lead to a lot of resentment among other states.
Okay, Professor, we'll have to leave it there for now, but thank you very much for your insight and your analysis today. Klaus Vlaris, a distinguished professor of history and international affairs at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
So we have been talking about President Trump's speech less than half an hour ago, the first direct speech to Americans about why the U.S., started Operation Fury. He basically outlined his campaign pledge about making sure that Iran would not have any nuclear weapons as the primary reason, for Operation Epic Fury. He also went on to say that military objectives for the Americans are about 2 to 3 weeks away from being completed. And he said that the U.S. would be striking Iran hard, very hard in the meantime, but not specifically saying what happens after 2 to 3 weeks. He talked about the Strait of Hormuz and allies as well, saying that, allies should take control of the strait, despite the fact that it was the U.S. that basically actions that led to the closure of the strait.
All right. President Donald Trump says the U.S. will hit Iran extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks, vowing to finish the job after more than a month of war.
The American leader just delivered a televised address from the White House where he gave an update on the conflict. He said the hard part was done with and Iran essentially decimated.
We are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We have not hit their oil, even though that's the easiest target of all. because it would not give them even a small chance of survival or rebuilding. But we could hit it, and it would be gone, and there's not a thing they could do about it.
Mr. Trump reiterated that discussions with Iran are ongoing, even as Tehran continues to deny talks are taking place. He again called on countries to build up delayed courage and go to the Strait of Hormuz to protect shipping there. Iran has effectively shuttered the waterway for weeks, sparking a global energy crisis that has pushed oil and gas prices sharply higher.
The countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. They must grab it and cherish it. They can do it easily. We will be helpful, but they should take the lead in protecting the oil that they so desperately depend on.
Well, Greater China markets are opening on the back foot after President Donald Trump said the U.S. would hit Iran extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks, dampening hopes for a swift resolution to the conflict. Oil and gas shares are bouncing back in the morning session, offsetting some losses in the AI sector. We're still seeing a more downbeat mood right now in China, with the Shenzhen leading the way lower by about 0.8%. And many shares in Asia markets also erasing earlier gains after the president's primetime address. The Nikkei is now down by about 1.4%. South Korea's Kospi also erasing earlier gains, down by more than 2%. Singapore's STI down about 0.2%. Their expectations, of course, there will be more downside for global markets today. And U.S. futures are also moving lower as well, with NASDAQ futures leading the way down by about 0.8%. The conflict in the Middle East has roiled financial markets and pushed several equity gauges into correction territory over the past 5 weeks. With that, oil prices again are jumping above $100 a barrel as the president told nations to go to the Strait of Hormuz themselves to secure their own oil. And he also urged nations struggling with supplies to buy oil from the U.S. Well, more on the impact of the war can be found on our website as well as our mobile app, including this article on why diesel is more expensive than gasoline. Do check it out.